All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone out there in Facebook world, and good afternoon, our special guest, Miss Carmen Schaefer. How are you this afternoon?
Great.
Yes, it's been a whirlwind of a day for you. Oh, well, Carmen, I can't thank you enough for being our guest today on this Facebook Live. If you haven't read in the comments, or excuse me, in the description of this particular Facebook Live event, today's a special day. It is the Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And who better to speak to that than one of our own accessibility experts here at the University of Missouri, Miss Carmen Schaefer. And so, Carmen, before we jump into all of those details on what the Global Accessibility Day is, tell me a little bit about you and what you do here on campus.
Absolutely. I work in the Adaptive Computing Technology Center, also known as the ACT Center, and we're a small department within the Division of IT. And so me and my colleagues provide a bunch of services for faculty, staff, and students who have disabilities. So my colleague supports making sure that the course materials are accessible. And then my other colleague, she works specifically with assistive technology, such as screen readers and technology that helps the individuals with disabilities to access information in the computer. And then I work in digital accessibility or web accessibility and make sure that the things that we purchase and develop and acquire is accessible to all of our faculty, staff, students, and customers.
Wow, lots going on there then in your world. And I just want to thank you because this is something that I know that should be at the forefront of a lot of businesses and a lot of organizations' minds, but not necessarily something that all organizations have the resources for. So you are a tremendous asset to the University of Missouri. Thank you again. I want to, before we jump into questions, just open it up, let our audience know if you're watching this, you have questions along the way, please send those in to me. I'll kind of give you an initial little prompt here. Let me know where you're joining from. So send me a message in the chat. Let us know where you are joining from today. And then as usual, should you have any questions throughout this live, we'll work our best to answer those too. So Carmen, I want to back up a little bit and I want to talk a little bit about when we say accessibility. Help me understand kind of the big picture of web accessibility. What do we mean when we say that?
So it can mean a lot of things. Anything that is digital, and our world is so digital, right? So anything from paying bills now online to accessing any kind of websites, electronic documents, commonly known as PDFs. We receive a lot of those, and any kind of forms that we have to fill out. So anything digital is kind of what we're talking about today. There is that aspect of physical, access. So like your ramps and, that type of access, but we focus on more digital and computer access. But in general, digital accessibility is about being able to access that digital information. So if you have a disability and you use a screen reader, which, talks everything out loud on a computer, all the information, or you use a screen magnifier, which, magnifies the screen, or there's so many different assistive technologies, but that's what we're talking about is the access to people with disabilities that use different types of assistive technology or whatever they need to obtain the information.
So lots of different things out there, and I know when I was doing research for this, and what was interesting, I found this on the Global Accessibility Awareness Day website, but it was 1 billion people out there living with some sort of disability or impairment. And when you think of where we've gone over the last 2 years, right, everything going remote, a lot more use online, what we're doing right now, a Zoom meeting versus being face-to-face, there's a lot of great things that come with that, but certainly a lot of considerations specifically for those people who may have those disabilities or impairments. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So like you said, with the pandemic, everything really did go to a more digital environment, right? From classes to meetings. And it really does pose a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
But with those opportunities, we also have to seize them, or we create barriers and obstacles. So we just have to make sure that, like for right now, using this Zoom meeting, for someone who has an auditory impairment, we would want to be using captions right now, and Zoom has that built in, this live transcript. And I don't even know if I can talk it on. Yeah, so I have to request to have it enabled, but we could have enabled that, and I kind of forgot about that. Is that we just need to make sure that we're considering all members of our audience, everybody that could be, purchasing our products, accessing our courses, participating in meetings, anybody with all kinds of abilities, and how they could be consuming information. We just need to be aware, and that starts with just that, being aware and awareness, and starting to learn about it and talk about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's the goal of this day today. And I really love some of the little challenges that you and I, when we were preparing for this, we had talked a little bit about what are some of those little unique things that people can do to maybe put themselves in the shoes of somebody with that disability or impairment, so they can see maybe how things are functioning or not functioning.
Yeah. So one of the things that other institutions are doing is they're using this day to bring this awareness. And so one institutions I saw, that they said, okay, we're going to challenge you to not use your mouse for a day. So only use your keyboard to try to access all the information. And I thought that was brilliant, because keyboard access is huge. And so that's a little of kind of what we're talking about, is just try not to use your mouse. Or something else is maybe color filters aren't. Microsoft has come out with a color filter now, but there's such thing as like grayscale. So you could actually, change your computer to grayscale, or your browser, and not use color, and see what it would be like to, have color blindness. And so those are what we're talking about. And then, maybe certain visual impairments don't allow you to perceive certain colors. So if you use that grayscale, then what would it be like to consume that information, that website, without color? So those are kind of some of the things that we're talking about.
My goodness. And what a great, I want to say neat, I don't know if neat's the proper word for it, but what a neat way to really put yourself, to be able to empathize and to put yourself in that situation that maybe a lot of us take for granted on a day-to-day basis. And so I love some of those little ideas. Some of the stats that I had pulled from this global accessibility awareness, some of the most common errors. So the low contrast text, 86% of websites have low contrast text, missing images, alt text. All right. So when it asks you, and it even asked me on LinkedIn and Facebook, every time you upload an image, what's the alt text you want to put with it? And that seems like that's relatively new in the last few years, that I think they had started doing that. But in every other document or form that you make, that's something to be considerate of. Empty links, 66% of websites have empty links. I mean, the list goes on, right? Yeah. There's a lot of these different things. So what are the major consequences of not being considerate of accessibility with your website, with your web pages, if you're a business?
Oh, major consequences could range from, just losing business, not being able to reach all of your customers or all of your audience that you could be if you were, maybe made a couple even simple changes. Somebody might leave your website quickly just because of poor color contrast. I certainly know that we are seeing the baby boomers, aging. And so, we have diminished related disabilities. And so, our eyes start, not seeing as well, and, that type of thing. So, we could lose customers. I mean, ultimately, if, and we want to make sure, I think the big one is we want to make sure that, we're making or allowing for people to be independent. And so that they can pay those bills online, that they can purchase from your website if you're an e-commerce site. Another thing is reputation, just kind of having a reputation to be able to cater to everyone, that you're considering every one of your everyone, and not in. And I like to bring this up as unintentionally excluding, because sometimes we just don't realize about, we don't think about this, or we just never, we just maybe have never come across it before. But again, that's why we're having these conversations now, to start getting to know about it, and to have that reputation that for all of the audience members. And I think I mentioned the one is just allowing, that you're allowing people to be independent, that they can do their finances online and be a part of a independent part of our society because they're completely capable of doing so.
Well, and this really, as I thought about this, and some of the things that we had chatted about was this concept that right now, a lot of you can't go anywhere down the road without seeing a now hiring sign. And a lot of our hiring processes, our job postings are put online. And I don't know any places nowadays that you can walk in and fill out a form in person. But when you're considerate of that as well, there can be some consequences if you're one of those companies even trying to hire with your job postings maybe not being as accessible. You're limiting a lot of options. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think there certainly is that potential that if you're not making sure that, even if you're outsourcing, you're to a third party product for posting jobs, or, the application process, getting really involved in that purchasing aspect of it to make sure that what you're purchasing is accessible. If you do outsource it, I know a lot of small businesses, they have to outsource a lot of these things because they don't have the resources. And so just making sure that when you do outsource things, just making sure that that company does make things accessible. But yes, absolutely could be impacting that. You could be losing out on some really good candidates,
Right.
job candidates.
Right. And that right now in this great resignation, certainly not something that you want to be known for as an organization. And so and again, you're absolutely right. Sometimes some of the smaller businesses, don't have the resources on hand, like what we're fortunate to have here at the university. And I know, there are some. I just read about a ADA related lawsuit with a pizza company, a national pizza company chain, and they lost their case. And when they came in, because their website was not accessible, and they've gone through the Court of Appeals, and I think it's still in court right now. But there's a lot of concerns financially, maybe on organizations, and that's the case here at the university and for every academic institution as well.
Absolutely. That would be one other potential
consequence.
Yes, consequences is a lawsuit or some legal fees.
Right. So certainly a lot of reasons to keep this at the forefront of our minds. Let's talk a little bit about those benefits, transitioning gears a little bit, the benefits of really investing some time, and it's probably time up front in really making your site accessible, all of your web activity accessible. What are some of those benefits?
So I think they're really the opposite of what the consequences are, right? I mean, ensuring that, again, people with disabilities can work, contribute, and be included equally in our society. That we can increase maybe profits. I'm not a business major, so I don't know exactly all the terms, return on investment, profit line, I may, margin line. I'm not a business major, so I just know that, there is people out there that you could benefit if you made your website, if it was an e-commerce site, or whatever your services are, utilizing your services, if you made it accessible, then again, the baby boomers are getting older, and it could be even people that we're just not thinking of, just because they can't see the text because you use small text and they left your website. So making sure that you're keeping those customers when they come to your website or your social media site. Like you said, they are incorporating now accessibility into social media. And I know social media is starting to be a big way that people are, communicating and doing business. So make sure that you check in on those accessibility features within your social media sites. But I think also one final thing I'd like to really hone in on is just improving customer satisfaction. Because when you make your website accessible, you really make it more user-friendly for everyone.
Mm,
It's, we kind of get this idea that, well, how many people are really using a screen reader? But ultimately there has been, research, I don't have it specifically, but there has been, information out there that says that really it does make just an overall better product in the end.
yeah.
Accessibility does. So you don't have to sacrifice aesthetics. You don't have to, it doesn't have to, there's a lot of myths about accessibility, and there is easy things that you can do. And yes, there are more complicated things, but we can start with the simple, right? We can get familiar with it and start learning.
Absolutely. And it all starts here. So I'm grateful for our folks who have joined on. I want to give a shout out. Kyle has said hello in our chats here. So he is our interim communications director here at Extension, and he was so great in getting me connected with Carmen. So I'm grateful. Thank you again, Carmen, for your time. And thanks, Kyle, for getting the connection made. If you have questions, again, I see some folks here. Maybe you are wondering where to start, and we're going to kind of head that direction. But if you have specific questions, let us know. We're also going to post some resources here in the comment section in just a little bit. But in the meantime, let us know. Kyle said happy to do so. Let us know what questions you might have that are specific to your organization. But let's start there, Carmen, because again, this can feel like a daunting or overwhelming task for any business if they don't have the immediate resources on hand. Where would you suggest people start?
So the awesome part about all this is there's so much free resources and information out there. So anything from taking an introductory online class, which I have one that we can share. Introductory knowledge, I think, is kind of big, because sometimes if you jump in and then like, oh my, there's a lot to this. It's like, kind of take the steps, to get to where you need to go. So I like the introductory information, such as online classes that are free. If you want to jump right in and you want to know if your website's accessible, there's a lot of free accessibility checkers out there that you can put your website. You can use, well, there's different ways. You can either plug your web address or URL into the checker if it's free, and let it scan your or crawl your website, and then it'll kind of give you like some feedback of what some issues might be. And then there's one that it's real time, and so you basically go to the checker, and then in real time it'll show you like, oh, this is poor color contrast, oh, here's an empty heading level, here's an empty link. So it's really easy to use. But then another thing is there's a lot of reputable companies out there, digital accessibility experts and companies, and just, nonprofit experts, accessibility experts, that are doing a lot of free webinars right now. Honestly, this is a big topic right now. And I am seeing a lot more than when I started over 15 years ago. And there's so many webinars to get started. So a lot of free information out there. And then we also have a resource that I can share that has a lot of the free resources out there. And then there's one other resource that I will plug in that has free webinars. And those are what my suggestions would be to get started.
Excellent. Yeah, great points. I remember when I worked for the city, one of the things, and if you're familiar with city websites tend to be very, very deep, lots of information on there, but also sometimes difficult to navigate. And that was one of the big pushes, was to just kind of start from the beginning. Like, let's get a full big picture of where are some places we might be falling short. And one of the things we noticed right away was actually in all the documents that we were just linking on the website, a lot of the documents weren't accessible to screen readers, or even missing some of those alt text, lots of different things like that we don't always consider because it's just a link on our website maybe. But can you speak to that? Because I know that there's maybe some built-in programs, for example, like with Microsoft Office, I think they have built-in programs where you can run checks on some of those documents.
They do.
Okay.
So on one of the resources I'm going to give you, it's digitalaccess.missouri.edu, and it goes into each of the document types. So if you're creating a Word document or a PDF or whatever you're creating, it gives you those resources that walks you through step by step, and the checkers. So their Microsoft came out with an accessibility checker. I'm not exactly sure what version. I want to say it's been out for a couple years for sure. And it will flag. You can do it as you're creating the document or after the fact. I think there's a setting that says check it as I go, and it will flag you for accessibility issues. And not only does it flag you, but then it'll tell you how then to fix it. So, and then there's several that I won't go in too deep, but there's some PDF checkers that are free that can help you after you convert that Word document to PDF, that you can check a PDF.
Okay. So what I'm hearing, just the theme here, lots of opportunities out there to really ensure you're putting this at the forefront of your mind and practicing. You know, that's the other thing, is you may not have a full wide picture yet, just like I didn't when I went back through that website. I didn't have a full picture of how to make this site completely accessible, but the resources are available to you. And I will post that link in our comments section here towards the end of our webinar. I'll grab that from Ms. Carmen. So, you know, as we kind of think about this, I consider in maybe some of the smaller business or smaller organizations, there's got to be kind of a push, and I don't want to say push, that's probably a wrong term, but you have to have an emphasis on this. And in a way, I'm curious, what is the leader's role in kind of moving this process forward in your mind? What can they do to maybe support these efforts even more within their organization?
Well, I like that you said in my mind, because I'm not at management level or director level or higher. So in my mind, from my perspective of working with employees on creating accessible websites, documents, I feel like here's the list that I've come up with. It's got to start by letting your employees know that you believe that accessibility is a priority, and starting with the awareness of it as a business initiative or a department initiative, or, you know, what if you have a small business, that you're going to, you know, start this new initiative if it's new. And so you're going to convey the importance of accessibility, not just by saying, hey, this is what we're going to be doing, but then I think you need to back that up with a plan, kind of a planner. And I feel like your employees kind of need to understand, you know, like, okay, this is what this is, and then this is the path we're going to take to get there. And so you need to give your team the time and the resources to incorporate accessibility into their daily routines, from creating accessible documents to launching a new website. I think that the time factor is one of the biggest issues that I see, is we don't quite give enough time to a lot of things we do to incorporate accessibility. And once you start doing it, it gets easier and faster. But I think at the beginning, you know, it does take a little bit more time at the beginning. And then add training opportunities, give your staff the time to take free webinars, free training. And then I would ask to provide some accessibility progress updates to ensure the commitments of what they're doing, you know, making sure that you give them the resources, but then they're giving you, you know, you're making sure, checking in that, okay, are we on track? And what does that measurement look like? What's that milestone? What is that? What are we working towards? And give them, you know, something that then you can measure and see if you're getting there. And then I think ultimately is to equip your employees with the tools, the knowledge, a resource, and a plan. And then I feel like you need to empower your employees to do this.
Great points. Thank you for that, Carmen. And I really appreciated how you mentioned the time, because I can often think, even that project I was mentioning that I was doing for the city, we were on deadline to just get the new site up and going. And a lot of that didn't allow for as much consideration of all of the accessibility, and because it takes time, it does, you know, I'm not naive to that. It certainly takes a little bit of time, but I also loved how you said once you get going and you learn and you start doing it more frequently, it becomes a little easier.
It gets easier. Yeah, we don't know, and then we know, and then we start learning. It's like, oh, I got this, I know what this is. And you know, it's a process.
Right. Just like everything, certainly a process. So I want to go ahead. Oh, Julaine, thank you, Julaine, for commenting. One of our guests on this, she's been on our podcast actually, but Julaine is saying also making sure we're celebrating those accomplishments. So once they've done what they're supposed to be doing, taking time to celebrate.
Love that.
Can you think of just in your work with different teams, I guess bringing that to life a little bit, where you've seen a team maybe go through that project or that process and then celebrate that kind of accomplishment?
Ooh.
I put you on the spot with that one. Sorry.
Well, the celebration, I'm going to celebrate it.
Yeah.
I have seen our digital services. I really have seen who maintains Missouri.edu. I've really seen them, the transformation over the last 10 years, them working to incorporate accessibility. And I always want to give credit where credit is due. And I do think that there's always room for growth, but I am totally with that chatter. We have to celebrate those wins. And if you go to Missouri.edu, I feel like from what I've seen as we've went along, we are making great strides in accessibility. Sure. Is there always room to grow? And, do we have a long way to go? Maybe some areas, but I think we should celebrate those wins. And I think that Missouri.edu, our web developers, are that department. I give them kudos for what I've seen over the years.
Yeah, we're all, and I think that is something, that momentum that and we've talked about this before on other Facebook episodes too, but the momentum that you gain from those celebrations is it's incredible. And that's what keeps your team moving forward. And that's what keeps everybody on track and on mission and ready to really achieve even more. And this is an area where we've got to put our focus. I don't think it's an option anymore. Would you say that?
No, I agree. I think we're getting to that point. Absolutely. And I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. So could you repeat that? But
I'm just saying, I think now, because of what we've gone through and because we are in this environment where we are on the computer a lot and we're creating a lot of content that is all digital, there has to be an emphasis in this area. I don't think we're at a point where it's like, oh, well, and I feel like I've worked with business in the past. We're like, okay, well, it's a nice to have. It's not necessarily a nice to have anymore.
Right. I agree.
It's kind of a requirement now, especially because we want to tap into all of them. We want to make sure that everyone is included in the opportunities that our organizations provide.
Absolutely.
So some great points. I'm going to give a final call out here. I'm seeing Carmen sending me a bunch of great links, so I'm going to post these in the comment section.
I accidentally put one in the chat. I was sending them to you so you could send them out, but
yes, thank you.
One specific to Global Accessibility Awareness Day. I'll just go ahead and say that it is a reputable company, expert in the field, and they had some free trainings, and I don't know if they're all over. They might be over. I don't know if you can go back up and register. There's a boot camp, an accessibility fundamentals boot camp. But if you go to DQ, they have a lot of free webinars. I highly recommend DQ. And then I sent another link that you can share that would be another reputable accessibility expert that we reference a lot and use a lot. So
excellent. Yes, I will share all of these in the comment section. So final call out for questions to any of our Facebook guests. Let me know if you have any questions that we can answer for you here with Ms. Carmen while we have her for a few minutes longer. But Carmen, one thing I guess I want to just kind of start closing out on first. I want to know, you are titled as an IAAP accessibility certified. What does all that mean?
So as we started seeing, as I started going through, web accessibility in my job, we started seeing more, I guess you would say, buy-in, and like you said, more requirements and things. And so an organization came out with a certification because I think that, there was this push to make sure that, number one, what we were doing was getting somehow being standardized, right? That we were all working towards the same goal and conveying the same information. What is an accessible website? What does that look like? What does it mean? And it all goes back to the digital accessibility standards. But that certification came out a couple years ago. I think to really just try to, I don't want to say regulate, but just make sure that people understood, who really knew, what this means, and that we were kind of creating that structure and
Mhm.
standard for accessibility, if that's a helps.
It does. It does. Yeah, that standard, having that standard approach. And so you really are our go-to here on campus. You have gone through all of the certifications. You have a lot of experience in this. And one of the things I really love, and I want to just thank you for, is your passion on this topic. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge with all of us today. As we start rounding it out, I guess final thoughts, any other big things we should take away when it comes to web accessibility?
Yeah, I want to share something that I recently learned that I actually felt very refreshing. Nobility is a resource that I sent you to share out, and they're amazing. They have I'm privileged to go to their conference, digital accessibility conference, once a year, and they actually have a free, one of their keynotes did one of their keynote speakers did a presentation on small businesses and accessibility. So if you go to their website, or I think it's their YouTube page, that keynote presentation is out there. But they have a lot of free webinars, and they had one specifically on alt text, and I attended it. And being into this 12, 15 years, I am losing count. Sometimes I feel like I'm hearing the same information over and over and over again, and I probably am. But Erica Braverman shared this through this this alt text webinar, and it actually was new to me. I hadn't heard this, and this would be something that I'm going to start sharing. Is that if people start thinking, oh my gosh, I've never heard of this before, how many PDFs have I posted that aren't accessible? Or, oh my gosh, I'm created this class for students. What if all my students can't access this information? And it's almost kind of like this, oh my gosh, like, you get that almost overwhelming anxiety type feeling. I don't like that. If this would ever create anxiety for someone, I don't want that to be what this is about. And this is what she said: no one was born with this knowledge. Accessibility was not built in a day. This is an ongoing journey, and you will always learn something new, no matter how experienced you are or you get. And just do the best that you can. Keep working at it. Don't get so worried or overwhelmed that you don't start. So, don't jump to, what is this going to cost me? Or I don't have time for this, or I don't know if I'm doing this right. So if there's any of those, kind of put that aside and say, okay, let's start, from point A to get to, where we need to go. And she ended with this quote: do the best that you can until you know better. Then you will know better and you do better. Or
Mhm.
do better. And I kind of messed that up a little bit, but I think that's by Maya Angelou, I
Yes,
think.
ma'am.
Okay. So I love that. I love that, because this shouldn't be something that ever causes anxiety or fear or, that worry. It's something that we embrace,
Mhm.
and let's be excited about it. And what do we need to do? That type of attitude. So
Yes, I love that. And you're absolutely right, because I think in those times, again, going back to that scenario I told you earlier, there was a little bit of analysis paralysis, like, where do you start? How do we do this? How do you fund doing this? How do and that can certainly put you at a standstill on moving this forward. But let's just put one foot in front of the other and try something, right?
yes.
All right. Well, great. I love that. And I love that Maya Angelou quote, probably my favorite. And I want to just kudos to everyone on the call today, because this is where it starts. It starts with taking that first step and starting to upskill a little bit. Of course, here at MTI, we are happy to help you along that journey, or at least connect you to the resources, since we are not experts in accessibility, but we're grateful to have Carmen on today to share her wealth of knowledge. And Carmen, I'd like to put some contact information for you in the comment section too, if that's okay, along
Yes.
with all of those other assets I'm going to put in there
Yep.
here very shortly. I have to switch over to a different account. But any other things, any final things that I might have missed?
Nothing for me that I can
Okay.
think of. It just, if you have those resources that I sent you and you shared those out, I think that's a great, those are great resources to start with.
Perfect. And they are, I've already looked at one, the one that you'll see, the very first one I'll post here, the digital, it's digitalaccess.missouri.edu. And that, I just started going through that and the videos and the things that you all just break down and share on there. Very, very helpful. So thank you for, I know you were part of maybe that team that put that together. So thank you for those resources.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm not seeing any other questions in our chat right now. You've given all the great information that they need, Carmen. So I want to thank you again for your time. Thanks for being a part of our Facebook Live.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And to everyone out there, I'm going to steal it from Ray because Ray is actually in Connecticut right now. She'll be home soon, her and Dewey are training, but she'll be back on a live with me. But until next time, we'll just say, go be great.